Melissa Flemming, Under Secretary General for Global Communications at the United Nations. Welcome to hashtag EVAW, the day for the elimination of violence against women.
Great to see you, Jeremy, and great to be with you. Thanks for focusing on this really important topic.
Yes. Well, the first thing I'd like to ask you, Melissa, because I know how important this is to you, could you tell us about what motivated you to focus on this issue?
My work, I've worked throughout my whole career in war zones and in refugee situations. And probably the most egregious form of sexual violence and violence against women is conducted in wars. Rape is being used as a weapon of war systematically. I remember it happening in the theater of Bosnia and Herzegovina. In many places where I worked at UNHCR, Democratic Republic of Congo, Libya, and now in Sudan, it is, so many women and girls are reporting being abducted, being raped, and, not only having to suffer the horrors of fleeing for your lives, but also having to live with that horrific violent act, some of which is resulting in shame. It's resulting in sense of hopelessness, in unwanted pregnancies. So it is a form of violence that is being used not just as power, but to silence women, to divide societies, to break families apart. And it's something that we really have to put an end to. So I feel really motivated by that. But just one other area, since I've been working here in New York as Undersecretary General for Global Communications, I've been working very much on trying to make our internet and our online ecosystem more humane. And one of the areas that is really striking is that women, whether they're women leaders, women journalists, women climate activists, are targets for online attacks, and it's silencing them in many cases. It's forcing many politicians who are women have heads of state even to end their careers early, or just to live in the fear of the online violence turning into offline violence. So this is something again that has to be stopped in the theater of war and also in our online ecosystem. And I'm really committed to trying to make a small difference from my perch.
Melissa, why is a day like this so important? I mean, what kind of results does it manifest?
Well, I mean, I have to say it is the 25th anniversary this year. It was a General Assembly resolution, General Assembly designation to establish the International Day for Elimination of Violence Against Women. And it was in memory of sisters, Mirabelle sisters, who were brutally assassinated on this day in 1960. So the day has remained very meaningful every single year going forward, just because women and girls continue to be targeted. And it is a time when we can put out the statistics that are very alarming and call for action. For example, in 2023, a woman was killed by an intimate partner or family member every 10 minutes. So every 10 minutes in the world, a woman was killed by an intimate partner or family member. Domestic violence, really, really bad. Also, nearly 1 in 3 women across the world have experienced physical or sexual violence at least one time in their lives. We also have the problem, and this is another form of violence, and that is child marriage. Girls being forced to marry at young ages. 9 million girls are going to marry in childhood by the year 2030. And we've been really disturbed by a law that is being considered in Iraq that would lower the age to 8 for girls, the age of marriage to 8 years old. So this is child marriage. Girls are not spouses, and this is something that we have to really advocate against. And then finally, there's another form of violence that we at the UN are really disturbed by, and that is female genital mutilation. There, unfortunately, has been a 15% increase in the last 8 years. There are over 230 million girls and women who have undergone this practice. And so, again, we are putting out these kinds of statistics on this day in order to raise awareness and to put a stop to it. So it is important. You're back to your question, what can we do to stop violence against women? We have to come together. We have to raise awareness. We have to put it into laws. We have to get new policies on online platforms, and try to do what we can to reduce it and hopefully put an end to it someday. We have to have that aspiration.
Melissa, I mean, the United Nations is covering all kinds of issues, whether it's children or refugees or ceasefires, conflict. You are doing an awful lot around the world globally, many different departments. Talk to me a little bit about the different agencies that are trying to do something around the elimination of violence against women.
Well, maybe if I could start with my department, the Department for on Global Communications at the United Nations. We are very concerned about our online ecosystem, that our information ecosystem has become toxic. And this is because of social media platforms that prioritize engagement and tend to push like polarizing and extreme content. And much of this content is around violence against women who are trying to express themselves online. We have seen a rise, and we're really worried about AI and the ability to create sexualized deep fake content. And that is happening and persisting. So we have introduced UN Global Principles on Information Integrity that aims to, counter online abuse and to make the digital space safer and more humane. So it's like a blueprint for that. But obviously, across the UN system, we have a number of organizations. Of course, the ones that are out there first and really out front: UN Women, UNFPA, and there has been some progress out there too. So it's not all bad. We have more of society, whole of society. We have many governments who are actually putting into place laws that allow for justice in many cases and result in prosecution and conviction of perpetrators. So we have seen also in 2023, 104 countries did have comprehensive laws addressing domestic violence. And also 78% of countries now provide some budgetary commitments for services that address violence against women. And I know that across the UN system, as I mentioned, UN Women, UNFPA, but also UNICEF, in the refugee space, UNHCR, and WHO are really focusing on helping governments to strengthen their protections for women, and also helping women ourselves. So there is some good news. We know that violence against women is preventable, and there is more evidence than ever before that whole of government and whole of society approaches that have some dedicated funding for the civil society groups and women's rights organizations, that they can vastly reduce the violence that women are facing.
Thank you, Melissa. So finally, for those needing information or support, where would you recommend they go for information and guidance?
Well, again, I'd like to first and foremost point to UN Women. They have many resources on their website on how to spot and how to help in cases of violence, such as relationship abuse. As I mentioned, this is rampant. So there are other websites such as Lila.help, and Know More global directory. And there you can find lists of domestic and sexual violence helplines and services from all over the world. But mostly, I think, well, these are very important resource sources for women and girls, but for everybody, we have to be part also of not standing for, not allowing any kind of violence against women to happen. And if we encounter somebody in our community, because I mentioned that statistic that, so many of our friends and family, our daughters, our sisters may be experiencing some kind of violence, whether it is sexual violence, domestic violence, online violence. If they disclose to you that they are experiencing abuse, it is really important, just to have an open ear for them, listen without judgment, and let them know that you believe in them, ask what you can do to help, and also support this person's decisions while perhaps guiding them to some of the resources that I just mentioned. Thank you.
Melissa Flemming, thank you for participating in #EVAW, and we wish you the very best with your incredibly important work. Good luck, Melissa.
Well, Jeremy, thank you for bringing this important issue out into the world and your support.